Andrea, please take us through your insights and best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So just for some background, I've been in the MarTech space now for about 5+ years. And when I started, I worked with personalization solutions and marketing automation solutions. And it's crazy to me that 5 years ago, it was something that was nice to have for the marketer. But now when I look at the need for it, I consider it to be absolutely essential in order to really drive engagement and drive conversions and ultimately create loyalty with buyers. So as the saying goes, personalization turns lookers into bookers, meaning you're going to take people that come to the site and would normally just browse on maybe a few offerings, flight deals, hotel deals, and they'll actually book if you're able to personalize and tailor the experience to them. So it was found by Demand Gen that, in fact, leads nurtured with personalized content resulted in 20% increase in sales opportunities. And on this slide, you can see that I like to talk about the world today as the world of the empowered customer. So how did personalization become this must-have and really the expectation? And I think historically, marketers really controlled the experience for the consumer. They reached out to customers where and when they wanted. But there's been this shift where now it's actually in the consumer's control. They choose where and when they'll interact with a brand. So you think about that shift, and then you factor in that there's been this emergence of digital channels. And so the marketer is tasked with tracking all of these customer interactions across all of these channels every second. And typically that's just too much for the average marketer to keep up with. It's too much data. And not to put more pressure on any of you marketers listening, but it turns out that almost 75% of our online consumers actually get frustrated with websites if content has nothing to do with their interests. So it's not even just that personalizing content will drive engagement and drive conversions, but it's also that if you're not doing that for the customer, they might actually disengage with your brand entirely. And so on the next slide, you'll see as a marketer, this is really hard. I am a marketer, so I understand this, but we really struggle to connect a lot of our technology systems that will allow for the ability to link data and connect data, and it's 40% of us that really feel that pain. Now, 80% of us don't understand customers beyond just basic data. And what I mean by basic data is things as simple as a customer's name or maybe their purchase history. And then almost all of us, 96% of us marketers, really struggle when it comes to building just one single view of the customer. So on to the next slide, you'll see that these are not, the data silos aren't the only silos that exist, but it's our marketing technologies that don't speak to one another. And as a result, like we just talked about, we aren't able to transfer data and get a holistic picture of our customer. But beyond that, even if we do understand our customers and we have the content that exists to engage them properly, a lot of times our content also is siloed and it lives across all of these systems. So it might live across multiple sites or across different departments or sadly even on some of our desktops, which is unavoidable at times. And then finally, teams also live in silos, preventing key stakeholders from working together to create and execute on a personalization strategy that will scale. So we're going to talk about how to take a more data-driven approach. Now, the data you need, there are 6 key pieces or types of data that I've outlined. So the first one is customer identity data, and this one sounds simple, but don't be fooled. I think determining who a customer is might not be quite as easy as it sounds, because as your audiences are engaging with your brand, it might take them multiple interactions before they even identify themselves. So when I say identify themselves, I mean that they're responding through some sort of call to action. For example, maybe they're signing up for a travel newsletter. But when this does finally happen, it's important to be able to stitch together both their past interactions and their new ones. So you have to be able to merge the interactions they had as an anonymous user with now the interactions they're having as a known user. demographic data. It's important to not only know who your buyer is, but also gather information like their age, their gender, maybe even their income to help orchestrate a more personalized offering. So for some people where they're more money conscious and more budget conscious, you might want to make sure that you're tailoring offerings to their price point, for example. Now, geographic data, this is particularly important in the travel and tourism industry. It's at Acquia, it's a lot of our customers in this industry start by tailoring experiences based on geography. It's possible to drill down segments even further when you are targeting people in specific cities or metro areas. There might be, for example, a unique offering for audiences in a specific location. Maybe you have a deal for flights if people are traveling from New York City airports. So that's just an example. Now, audience behavior data. This is something that you need to be able to track. You want to be able to track every activities that individuals display across multiple channels, but also things like time they spend on a website, click-throughs, downloads, emails they open. The list it can go on and on, but it's this type of information that will help you identify patterns that will impact the customer satisfaction and ultimately conversions and ROI. So for example, if somebody is mostly clicking on family types of content on your page, you'll know that you'll want to tailor their experience towards just that. So aside from the behaviors they're showing, there's also this need for implicit data, which is the information they're not directly giving to you, but can be assumed based on information you've collected. So this type of data will include things like your audience preferences or interests and desires. And then, of course, lastly, we have our explicit data, which is the data that they're just willingly giving you on their own. So this could be information they provide through anything from like a form submit or maybe a registration or, again, a download of a travel newsletter. So now we're moving on to how to actually identify your target persona. So now you have all this data, you need to do something with it. You want to start by identifying the personas that you're going to go after. And just as a side note, if there is a way to see the data that you've collected in the form of a report or dashboard or visualization, any type of analytics, that'd be really helpful in this activity, in this process. You might realize that you have one persona you're really targeting, or you might realize that there could be hundreds of separate personas that you go after. These should be extremely detailed, as if you know the person, but also understand that this persona is representing a whole segment of buyers. So in this case, we want to know who exactly they are, key demographics, maybe some frustrations they feel, some of their motivations. And then for B2B contacts, like maybe meeting planners or professionals, we even want to drill down on some of their success metrics. So in this case, let's pretend we're targeting this woman named Linda Connors. And Linda, she's a female. She's somewhere between 25 and 40 years old. She lives in Boston, where I live, great city. Her income is estimated to be between 50 and 70K, and she has a couple of kids. And so for her, she has a limited budget, and she's frustrated because she wants to take her kids on a vacation somewhere warmer, ideally to an amusement park, maybe Disney World, for example. But she does have to take her kids when they're off from school. And of course, what happens on school vacations, other than a lot of times we see this markup of prices. So on to the next slide. We want to make sure that we are aligning offerings and messaging with our personas. We want to make sure that our value propositions align to personas. And again, Linda Connors is an example of just one, but there could be anywhere from 10 to 100. So it just depends how granular you want to segment your audiences. But you want to make sure you're explaining how the product and service will solve that persona's problem, whatever it is that they feel. Maybe make sure you're delivering a specific benefit and telling them how you're different. So for Linda, we're delivering an offer that will really help busy moms treat their kids to a trip of a lifetime at a really affordable price. And the benefit is there's discounted prices during school vacation weeks. It's an all-inclusive stay to a Disney or a Universal, some type of amusement park. and they're eligible, this deal's eligible for people coming from airports across New England. So how is it different? Well, most competitors would probably charge premiums for prices during busy travel weeks like school vacations, but we want to make sure that Linda Connors and people like her are able to afford the trips that they want to go on when they want to go on them. So now that we have this great offer, we also have to consider, on the next slide, we're going to talk about how you have to consider the different types of content that you're going to be displaying. So for Linda, starting out, maybe she saw this offering for the first time when she was on social media, but she doesn't really have time for social media all the time, so she normally likes to get notifications and communications via email. But she does like to check out the website on her mobile device and her desktop. And of course, with kids, she gets distracted easily, so having some banner advertisements that remind her to go back and finish her order and place or submit on her trip, that's something that would be beneficial. But it's tough for marketers because the customer journey requires all different types of content that's needed for emails, for social, for blog posts. And so you need to make sure that you have enough of these different types of content for each of your different audiences. And to go about doing that, it's great if you have a central place for all of your content so you can easily discover and repurpose any relevant materials. You want to be able to syndicate updates easily. Use the data that you collect to inform your content strategy so you're not wasting time writing content or creating content that isn't causing any type of conversions or bottom line results. And then make sure that when you do create new content, it's done within existing workflows and also it's properly tagged to get the most success out of it. Now, we're running out of time, but aligning the right technology. First, I think a lot of times people stress that they're not sure whether or not they need a personalization solution or a tool. And so it's important to start. We do offer at Acquia a package called Lift Starter, which is, and I know there's similar ones out there, but it's around just data collection, and that's always a good place to start. It allows you to really collect customer data on your site. You can exchange it bidirectionally with data from other systems to get that holistic view of the customer. And then there's pre-built and custom dashboards and reports to figure out maybe patterns in behavior and to help you determine how you should best segment your audiences. And then when you decide, if you decide that you do have all of these audience segments and you really should be personalizing and tailoring the experience, it's great to have a solution that will include the data collection component. And if you are required to build your own segments or determine your own segments, make sure whatever tool you choose does allow you to automatically move people from segment to segment based on their behaviors, because to do that manually would get to be a little bit time consuming. Most tools will do that for you though. And then of course you'll be able to deliver a more relevant experience to the buyer. So a customer that we share with Miles is the Visit St. Pete in Clearwater. And so they actually, like most other organizations, started by segmenting their audiences based on geography. So they actually had 8 different geographic segments. They had ones for in-state of Florida, close by cities, broader US and Canada, and then they had some specific ones for European countries as well. But they also tailor their experience based on the customer's interest and keyword use. So there's some customers that are really interested in outdoors and nature, and others are really interested in boating and water sports. So on the previous slide, you would actually see that the customers that search for beaches and are interested in beaches are able to click on the banner, Discover Our Beaches. And on the following slide, you'll see that those that have shown interest in water sports are greeted with this banner and are able to actually click on the hero image to plan a visit in water adventures. But as you can see, tailoring the experience to different audiences is more likely to keep them engaged and keep them moving down the path to purchase and hopefully coming back multiple times.